The 15-minute cities are put forward as a solution to the problem of undue distance to travel. And so the idea is that wouldn't it be lovely if we had walkable neighborhoods where everything you needed was within easy reach? And, I have some sympathy for that because I've gone to monoculture suburbs, let's say, that are nothing but row upon row upon row of identical houses with no churches and no bars and no community centers and, the shopping centers at a distance, and that doesn't look like an optimal urban model. But I looked into the C40 websites. The C40 is the consortium of municipalities that have signed on to the 15-minute city plan. And I read in their own documentation, this is relevant to the tri-state city idea, that their goals are to reduce caloric consumption to 2,500 calories a day by force, essentially, within the next 15 years, to ensure that the peasant class, which is everybody but the elitists, can't fly more than one time every 3 years, to not merely shift private car ownership from fossil fuel to electric, which is fundamentally impossible because the grid can't handle it, but to eliminate 90% of private car ownership so that people are forced to take unbelievably expensive in terms of time utilization and non-existent public transportation systems, and to limit the amount of travel that people can do outside of their neighborhoods. And then I watched the legacy media claim that pointing that out is something akin to a right-wing conspiracy, which it most certainly isn't, because you can just find the bloody documentation online. And then I look at places like China, which have taken this to an extreme. 600 million closed-circuit TV cameras in China, one for every 1.5 persons, watching the Chinese all the time, able to monitor them 100% by face, and also to identify them by gait, and to limit their ability to do absolutely anything, to buy, to sell, to travel, to move, to leave their neighborhood, with this top-down surveillance system that perversely and consciously some of the Chinese engineers have actually named Skynet, artificial intelligence that was in the bloody Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And you can't even talk about this stuff without sounding like a raving conspiratorialist. But tell me more about the tri-state city.
So the smart city goes beyond mere optics. They're installing those cameras all over Hong Kong. They were doing that when I left. That's in Hong Kong. But what I'm getting to is these smart cities are clearly coming, and they're already here to some degree every time we use our cards and that sort of thing. But they're clearly taking it to a higher level of complete control. And again, this isn't conspiratorial. They say they're going to do it. And when you talk about Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of Netherlands, you can see Klaus Schwab going, where do you find such prime ministers as Mark Rutte? You know exactly what's happening.
Well, one of the things we should point out to everybody who's watching and listening is that we're already 3/4 of the way down the digital currency pipeline. Once we're fully digital in our currency, that'll mean the government will be able to track absolutely every bloody thing you ever do, and also be able to do things like they're already doing in China. So the Chinese government has put expiry dates on some digital currency. So if they need to have the population spend more, let's say because there is a recession, they could just put in an edict that would make sure that your money depreciated by 2% every month, so that would be an impetus to spending. And they could do the reverse if they wanted you to save. And so it means in potential the emergence of a system for comprehensive control that's so complete that we can barely imagine it. And, we might say, well, isn't that paranoid? And I would say, look, we still think we were in a epidemic. What we were really in was an epidemic of imitating the Chinese communists. We thought when we integrated China into the world economy that the Chinese would turn into a Western democracy. But what's happening instead, we're turning into the CCP. And people are certainly not, and we're doing it under the guise of this idiot protect the virginal planet environmentalism that's all motivated by this, what would you say, fear-mongering apocalypse narrative.
That's probably the fundamental question of our time. So that's why we have to say no to all of these things. We have to say no to CBDCs. We have to say no to digital identity. We have to say no to 15-minute cities, because they're all the same thing. But it's problematic. It's hard in Western society, in the mind of modern men nowadays, to tell them that, those nice little pretexts that they use to sell this to us are not actually the truth. We need a return to real ethical debate about where we want to go as a civilization.